0 to 60 in the CT5-V Blackwing. Oh my God, that sounds good. Next to me is the CT5-V Blackwing, one of the coolest sports sedans ever made. It's available with a manual transmission, has a ridiculously powerful supercharged V8, and can do crazy smoky burnouts. But is it truly a competitor to the E63 and the BMW M5? Well, today we're going to find out exactly that. Under the massive hood of the CT5-V is a 6.2-liter supercharged V8. It makes 668 horsepower and 659 pound-feet of torque. That's a heck of a lot of power, especially in something that's comfortable and that has 4 doors. Now, when mated with the 10-speed automatic transmission, that means 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Now, I know your mom's Tesla Model 3 Performance can sprint to 60 faster, but trust me, with that massive V8, the incredible soundtrack, and watching the revs rise, this experience is a heck of a lot more fun. Easily my favorite part of the Blackwing is that it comes standard with a manual transmission. While this test car is an automatic, I beg you, if you're interested in a CT5-V Blackwing, buy it with a manual transmission. Not only is it $3,000 cheaper than the 10-speed automatic, it's just more fun. Yes, it might be slightly slower to 60 and a little slower around the racetrack, but in 2023, it's a really rare opportunity to be able to buy a 4-door sports sedan with a ton of power and a manual transmission. There's something about 3 pedals and being able to row your own gears that is incredible. And in a world where the M5 isn't available in a manual, the E63 isn't available in a manual, it's the obvious choice. Please, buy a manual. The Blackwing is a fantastic looking car, plain and simple. It's aggressive, but it doesn't look too cluttered. The design flows really well, and it feels like a mature, upscale, gentleman's sports sedan. And every single vent and element is actually functional for cooling that 6.2-liter supercharged V8. For those of you who perhaps haven't been following the brand closely, there's been a big name change. Up until 2019, the Big Daddy sports sedan from Cadillac was called the CTS-V. And the one a little bit smaller than that with a little bit less power was called the ATS-V. Well, the replacement is the CT5-V Blackwing of the CTS, and we've got the CT4-V Blackwing replacing that ATS. Now, the CT5-V Blackwing starts at $93,000 with a manual transmission. It'll cost you $96,000 for the 10-speed auto, yet another reason to go with the manual transmission. We've got 9 exterior colors to choose from, 2 of which are free. The rest are super cheap, in my opinion, for upgraded paint, between $600 and the most expensive being $1,200. This is called Rift Metallic, which I think looks really nice, although if it was my personal car, I would go with Electric Blue. Now, there's 3 different wheel styles and colorations to choose from, all of which are 19s. The only option I don't suggest getting on this car, and it's the most expensive option, is the $9,000 carbon ceramic brakes. I guess if you're tracking it all the time, it's gonna help with brake fade, but a lot of people who buy these cars and take it to the track a lot of the times remove the carbon ceramic brakes and put on an aftermarket solution, as it's cheaper maintenance-wise to not have to go through those carbon rotors and carbon pads. Save yourself the money, the steel brakes are fine. The rear of the Blackwing is very nicely done. It's aggressive without looking over the top. I love the quad exhaust and that little rear diffuser. There's only one thing I don't like about the exterior of the CT5-V, and that is, well, not the fact that it has an incredible exhaust, but the fact that you can't really show it off when the car's stationary. You see, it has a soft rev limiter that only allows you to rev up a couple thousand RPMs when the car is in park or neutral, so you'll have to be out on the road to actually let people listen to that incredible soundtrack. I'll let you listen to what it sounds like when you're in park. It's a little bit lackluster. Yet another reason to get the manual, because I believe that is not a problem. I'm actually going to eat my words a little bit here. Inside the vehicle, and you rev it to 4,000 RPM to that limiter, it doesn't sound that great. Listening to that clip back, it actually sounds pretty ridiculous from the outside. That being said, I wish you could rev it all the way up to its red line. The interior of the Blackwing is quite nice and offers a ton of creature comforts. That being said, it doesn't feel quite as premium in here as something like an M5 or an E63. Granted, those do start $20,000 plus higher as an MSRP than this car does, so keep that in mind. I'm really just not a big fan of how this looks, and there are a little bit of plasticky materials in and around, but it does feel nice in here. There's 6 color options to choose from for the interior. I really like that there's two-tone options. That split two-tone look makes it feel more exotic in here. Mandatory option, in my opinion, for the interior is the high-performance bucket seats. They look cooler, and they're gonna hold you in place better. In the rear of the Blackwing, there is an impressive amount of legroom. I mean, it's actually almost ridiculous. I love that. And I also love, on the performance buckets, you've got this beautiful Alcantara lining the backs of the seats that not even the drivers get to experience. Alcantara headliner. It feels spacious width-wise, but I will say my head, and I'm not that tall at 5'11", is jamming itself into the headrest. Now we've got an armrest here with some cup holders, couple creature comforts. We've got vents as well as cigarette outlet and USB-C charging, but we don't have our own climate controls back here. And I do wish there was a little bit more headroom. Back up front here in the Blackwing, and I will say we have a very nice digital instrument cluster that is fully customizable. I also love how the steering wheel fits in your hands. The paddles feel nice to the touch. We've got a series of buttons we'll talk about later on, a V mode that's fully customizable, as well as a traction knob on the steering wheel itself, which is pretty cool. We've got a touchscreen multimedia interface. I will say the sound system is really good, but this car is all about the driving experience, so let's get it out on the road and see what it's like to drive. Behind the wheel of the Blackwing now, and all I can say is, man, this thing is a riot to drive. That acceleration is brutal, the power is on tap instantly, and the suspension does such a good job mitigating body roll without being too jarring, but also communicating feedback all at the same time. Now, there's a variety of driving modes to choose from, all of which can be toggled via a little controller right here in front of the shifter on the automatic. Now, if we toggle that mode, I'm in track mode right now, which is my favorite. We can go into tour, we can go into sport. In tour mode, you get less exhaust note. In sport mode, a little less throttle response, not quite as intense as track mode, but track mode is the place to be. It also has customizable graphics. So in track mode, we got this awesome horizontally oriented tachometer that just looks so darn cool. Now, we've got a little button right here with the V logo on it on the steering wheel. That V button is a customizable driving mode that you can quickly access. So if you click that V button, up pops a screen where you can actually adjust what the V mode is all about: steering, suspension, traction control, etc. And then you can click that, so instantaneously you're in your favorite driving mode. But there's also another toggle on the right side of the steering wheel. I think this is super cool that they've included it on the wheel itself, and that's a traction control management switch. So if we go ahead and toggle through the different modes, there's inactive, there's a traction for wet mode, there's a traction for dry mode, then we go to sport mode, and then there's race 1 and race 2. Essentially, it's giving you a little bit more slip, a little bit more fun, and better performance on the track. I will say, despite having 668 horsepower, even in race 2, it doesn't feel like it's going to spin out or you're going to lose control. This car does give you an impressive amount of confidence behind the wheel for a high horsepower rear wheel drive car. Now, I'm gonna put it back into my favorite mode, race 2, track mode, flick down a couple of downshifts, and let's floor this thing. Obviously, one of the greatest parts about the Blackwing is that sound. The 6.2 liter supercharged V8 sounds absolutely incredible, and those upshifts with the 10-speed auto just crack between shifts. Now, I do have some gripes with the 10-speed automatic. It's pretty fast on upshifts, I'll give it that, but on downshifts, it doesn't have this nice whip to it. It doesn't have a great soundtrack when you hit that downshift that you would get with something like a DCT or with a manual transmission. Once again, almost the entirety of this video is about convincing you to buy the manual transmission option. Hopefully we can test one of those in the future. I just feel like the downshifts are a little bit slow. They don't sound as good. And the other thing I've noticed about the 10-speed is if you're the teeniest bit late and you pull the paddle right at redline, it lags a bit before it shifts. You basically have to pull the paddle before you get to redline in order to make sure that it has a clean shift. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it's a teeny bit annoying. The good news is we do have a heads-up display that I can see very clearly. It's controllable. You can change the height and whatnot, and what graphics you get to see. That will flash at me to give me a warning to shift at the perfect time without having to keep my eyes off of the road. Brakes work very well in this car. We've got the carbon ceramics, which are gonna help with brake fade out on the track. But once again, I don't think you need them in this car. I want to talk about how it is to drive at low speeds, but it's just too much fun that I don't really want to slow down. See, there you go. I hit that red line and it took kind of a ridiculous amount of time to shift. Now, there is a good amount of communication through the suspension and the tires to get an idea of what the Blackwing is doing without being too jarring, as I mentioned. I like that. Plenty of feedback there. The steering, while the weight is good and it feels nice, I wish there was just a teeny bit more feedback in the steering. Now, it's a bit of a catch-22 because I understand that this is supposed to be a refined sports sedan, not a flat-out, full-fledged track monster with uncomfortable bucket seats and ridiculous weight savings. But I do think they could add a little bit more feedback into that steering wheel with it still being comfortable at the same time. Now, we're going to put it into tour mode, something that honestly I haven't really experienced much while driving, although I did take this down to Long Beach for a Formula Drift event, and it was nice to have it in tour mode for it to be quiet, shift faster, get better fuel economy. You're not gonna get great fuel economy in this car, but nobody buying something like this is concerned about that other than the EPA making sure that it meets standards of today's day and age. But look, there's a lot more to this car than its fuel economy abilities. Another thing I like is the instrument cluster has kind of two different settings. If you click the little scroller on the steering wheel itself, you get more data to the left and the right of the tachometer and speedo. If you click that controller again, that goes away. You have this simplified look to it that I really, really enjoy. Driving this thing is surprisingly easy. Visibility is fantastic. It's got a great backup camera and surround view system. One of the best I've seen. Very, very clear graphics, and you can really tell the outer limits of this car so you don't crash into anything in the parking lot at low speeds. At low speeds, this thing is really easy to drive. And the crazy part is at high speeds, it's really easy to drive as well. Now, in tour mode, it's honestly reasonably quiet in here. There's not a ton of road noise. They do a great job of keeping it a luxury car. It does feel premium in here. It does ride nicely in tour mode, but then not sacrificing the awesomeness when you put it back into track mode, which we're gonna do right now because, well, that's the best mode by far. Gonna put it back into track, and then we're going to toggle the traction back into race 2. And I love the fact that in race 2, it's not so lenient with wheel spin that you don't feel comfortable behind the driver's seat. It almost feels like it does the majority of the work for you, which is really impressive on a car of this power, this weight, and this configuration, not being all-wheel drive and having the engine in the front. Means there's going to be traction issues in the rear, but the traction control management does a phenomenal job. See, I got on the gas a little bit early there in the corner. If traction control had been all the way off, I wouldn't have gotten on the gas so much, but that would have started definitely a drift. This worked through it. It didn't cut power. It wasn't awkward. It worked really well. Another thing I really like is how easy it is to put the car into manual mode. You take the lever right here and you pull it backwards. You don't have to pull it back and then over to the side. You just pull it back and then you can change between drive, pull it back again, and you put it into manual mode and you get these paddles. You know, while getting the manual is the obvious choice, if they did put the DCT from the Z06 in this car eventually, it would definitely heighten that driver involvement. Man, this thing is fast! And it's predictable at the limit as well. And it's fun at the limit. It doesn't feel muted. It doesn't feel like too much of a luxury car. You do have that lively, exciting vibe to it, which I really like. I'm also in love with the steering wheel. It's the perfect shape, perfect size. The leather feels fantastic in your hands. You've got that little notch at the top in red. I really like this thing. There was a period of time, and still a little bit, I really want to test out the manual where I was considering dumping the Plaid and getting a manual CT5-V Blackwing, because obviously it's a very modifiable platform. We've got years and years of history of people modifying that supercharged 6.2 liter, so you can make this thing crazy fast. And like I said, the availability of a manual in 2023 is rare, so getting that last hurrah would be fantastic. Now, is this a true competitor to the E63 and the BMW M5? I think absolutely. It's cheaper, it's got more power, and it sounds absolutely ridiculous. The interior is not quite as nice. It obviously doesn't have the feedback of something like an M5 CS, but then we're talking 150, 180 grand and not, you know, 90 to $100,000. Overall, I very much enjoy this car. It's fantastic to drive, both in the canyons, on the track, but also around town as your daily driver. There's creature comforts as well, and driver assistance features like lane keep assist, adaptive cruise control, heads-up display. Multimedia system is great and easy to use. Integrated Apple CarPlay is fantastic. Like I said, the speakers are awesome. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like always, please browse the channel and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next video.